Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Energy Realities Podcast. My name's Stu Turley, President and CEO of the Sandstone Group. I'll tell you what, this is an outstanding day. We are going to have a lot of fun this morning, and it looks like Tammy Nemeth is just now joining us. We've got David Blackman in Texas. How are you today, Mr. Blackman?
Oh, I'm just happy as a clam, man. It is freezing cold. It's 26 degrees outside, and winter has come to Texas, and a little early, at least earlier than normal, and maybe we won't have an 80-degree Christmas. It'd be wonderful.
It is kind of cold. I'm here in Abilene, Texas, and I agree. Both of my hairs are cold. And then we have also Irina Slav, the Irina Slav, not just a Irina Slav. How are you in Bulgaria today?
I'm great, thank you. It's cold here as well, but not as cold as where you are. How does this happen? Must be climate change. Yeah, you're further down south, globe speaking, than me. But yeah,
I don't think there's anything to climate change. I think that part of our 2026 predictions, I think we're going to see some things changing in the climate. But as we take a look in 2025, I did not have on my bingo card. Here we are in December. And Irina, your famous line, "Sanctions don't work as intended," is a wonderful t-shirt. And sanctions really don't work. We have a war in Russia going on with Ukraine, and we have the EU floundering, trying to end this as we go through the year. But I think I did not have on my bingo card that the United States would seize a tanker and the whole oil and gas industry would look at it and the markets go,
Yeah.
4 years ago, somebody thought about taking a tanker in the Red Sea, and all of a sudden we'd get a $20 spike. Irina, what do you think about the sanctions?
Which sanctions? The Russian sanctions?
Yeah, just any sanctions. They don't work as intended. That's a great line.
well, no. If you ask the Euro officials, they're working swimmingly. It's all going brilliantly. And the next package will be, it will be the death of Russia. It's not happening. We know they don't work as intended. As for Venezuela, I wasn't surprised by the oil market's reaction. I mean, everyone is so conditioned that there will be a massive glut, even if the IEA revised down its expectation of the size of the glut. Nobody cares anymore until the supply actually gets disrupted, massively.
Right.
There are now 2 tankers that are filling up in Venezuela. And as those 2 tankers, that's 4 million barrels of oil. And we have Tammy still trying to connect. And I can see that her camera is not working. It looks like she's trying to connect. And as you sit back and take a look, David, if the sanctions of the 2 tankers this week will be very telling for the Trump administration, as if they board those 2 tankers and take those and put them in the SPR and haul them off to Texas.
Well, we can fill up the whole SPR here just from confiscated tankers here pretty quick.
I think that would be an absolute brilliant move. But on the other hand, guess what happened to Panama? Panama this week is announcing that they will not be signing the 2013 Belt and Road Initiative update that they are required to continue in the Belt and Road Initiative from China. Let me think. The United States seizes a tanker in Venezuela, and then they don't sign. And remember, the 2 ports are still owned by China on each end of the Panama Canal. Is this about the Monroe Doctrine?
Well, possibly, yeah, probably. I mean, we've got like 30% of the U.S. naval assets all operating in the Caribbean Sea for the first time in history. So yeah, it probably does have a little bit to do with the Monroe Doctrine. There's obviously the administration has a problem with Venezuela's regime, the dictator down there who is completely illegitimate and shouldn't be holding that office. But on the other hand, I don't think most Americans are really on board with getting into another war. So the Trump administration is really got a big conundrum on its hand. The people who want to be really aggressive in the administration, like Marco Rubio and some others, are at odds with the No New Wars faction of which is the promise of the MAGA agenda. And so it's really hard to see how you're going to accomplish regime change in Venezuela without some sort of armed conflict. And I know they're trying to figure out a graceful way to do that while still trying to keep Trump's promises from the campaign. And he's already seeing his popularity decline with the public due to all the confusion over whether or not we have a healthy economy in the United States. There seems to be some question about that, although certainly stock traders appear to believe so. We're about to cross the 49,000 mark on the Dow this week, which a rising stock market is generally an indicator of future strength in the economy. So we'll, I guess, have to see how that all evolves. But on the question of sanctions, which is what the Seas tanker was all about, for the first time since the sanctions were invoked, the United States is actually enforcing them on Venezuela, which should have had an impact on the oil markets and didn't, as you pointed out. And I think Irina's exactly right. You're not going to have a big impact on oil markets unless the flow of oil through the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf is impacted. And just because nobody's worried about anything else related to the flow of oil. So anyway, it's a weird situation. Sanctions don't ever work the way they're supposed to work. The war in Ukraine has proven that irrevocably. And I think for the rest of history, everyone's going to know that, at least everyone with a long-term memory.
And it looks like
Hi,
we
Tammy.
have Tammy rolling into the studio.
Can you hear us?
Hi. Hi there.
Hi.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Hi, can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yes.
We're on a delay, though.
We had to
Apparently
drive.
there's like a
We're trying to
3-second
find a
delay.
signal. Okay.
All right.
That is
Trying to
my
find a
life
signal.
today.
I love that.
Okay.
We're talking about
Yeah, we're in the middle of
sanctions
nowhere.
and
See, there's
sanctions.
sea behind me.
Oh no.
And how sanctions don't work. Yes. Okay.
I'm afraid it's not working, Tammy.
No.
We're on like a 4-second delay and your audio's in and out.
You sound like I look.
Okay. So I'll just say, I hope everything goes well with the rest of the podcast. And whenever I see you guys next, if that's like in the new year, another show before the new year.
Yes, our next show will be after January 1st.
Yeah.
This is our final show for 2025.
Have a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Tammy.
Thank you, Tammy.
Okay.
Enjoy your break.
Okay. And as we see,
Yeah,
here's
first world
Robert.
Country doesn't have a good connection everywhere.
That's why I have a Starlink. You got to love a good Starlink. I keep that with me as a backup. Here's a great question from Robert. Robert, I see a significant NAMA 2026. How will oil respond to revolutionary efficiency gains? That's a
What's
big
NAMA?
question.
What is
What's NAMA?
NAMA?
North America, Mothers of America. I don't know. Robert, what is NAMA? Tammy found the only Rodney. I love Rodney. Rodney just actually has done some great research and a couple spreadsheets, and we're going to be writing some articles with Rodney. And I'm going to have him on a podcast coming up here. And Robert is also saying that. And Francis Moore has a great one, wishing you, Tammy, Irina, a very peaceful and indulgent in Christmas. And we hope for a better new year, especially in the UK. Boy, we sure are hopeful for that as well, too.
I definitely wish everyone in the UK a better 2026.
A better 2020. Yeah.
I don't think there's anyone besides Chevron in Venezuela. David, do you know of any other US companies?
They're the only ones.
Yeah, they got the one.
Chevron has been involved with the White House in meetings, and I'm looking at them as my day trading. I do not give investment advice. I just do this as to fix my gambling habit. And it is an absolute great fun. Chevron, when you take a look at the billions of dollars, and I wrote an article about this, when you take a look at Chevron, here's a funny one for you, and I want to ask your all's opinion. If you take a look at Chevron, if there's a regime change, the United States, as Michael Tanner had put out on our podcast this morning, and I agree, we are horrible at regime change. We have corrupt CIA people in the United States that try to do regime change. We stink at it. So what's the odds that we're going to do a good job on this regime change if we are doing a regime change? But if there is a regime change and it's a pro-U.S. government or pro-Trump administration in Venezuela, does that mean now United States gets a vote in OPEC?
That would be a very interesting situation.
Then you really could control the price of oil.
Ding.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a real paradigm changer if the U.S. had a vote in OPEC Plus, for sure.
Either by proxy or by that. So you have to sit back and take a look. We've got the two tankers that we were alluding to that are sitting there. We have the Monroe Doctrine, and I believe that is what is going on. I believe that we are seeing the trading blocks around the world shift. And I believe President Putin put out a article the other day. He actually addressed the American people and said, I don't want to do any business. I don't want to do that. You have President Trump and his security doctrine that he just put out saying that he wants to get away from the G7 and come up with India, China, Russia, and Japan as the next trading group. Holy smokes, Batman. I did not have that one on my yeah, I did. I had that one on my bingo card. But when you sit back and look, we're seeing the world change. I think in 2026, as we look at our 2026 predictions, we're going to see a lot of changes around the world in trade.
I was thinking, what do you guys think? Could it be that Trump wants to end the war in the Ukraine faster so we can, concentrate on Venezuela?
I think so.
I mean, sure. I think
keep two wars going. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly a motivator. The less conflict you have in other parts of the world, the more assets you can focus down in South America, which I think is really, a big concern for the United States. Is a big part of this. I mean, we joke about it, but a big part of what's happening in Venezuela is the inroads that China and Russia have made with the Maduro regime. And it's not just China and Russia, it's Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah. The terrorist groups are operating down there, in addition to all the drug cartels, sending drugs up to the United States. That's a real thing, a real issue that is killing a lot of Americans. And so, it's not an illegitimate concern, and I don't want anybody to think I think it is. It's just, as Stu says, our track record here in the United States with trying to change regimes and build nations is not exactly excellent.
You can't build a nation. That's what
can't.
We are seeing in the Ukraine and here in the Balkans as well with Kosovo. You have been trying, well, not you, But the CIA and affiliated organizations have tried time and again to change regimes. It doesn't really work. It always ends in disaster. So that's not a great track record. Maybe, let countries settle their problems themselves.
Here's two slides that I want to show as we go through this discussion. Here's the countries with the largest oil reserves, but who produces the most? You take a look at reserves don't necessarily mean oil production. Venezuela, 303 billion barrels of oil in reserve. Saudi Arabia, you have Iran at 209. Saudi Arabia, you sneeze in the desert and a couple hundred barrels of oil pop out. You look at Iran, I believe.
Where do these numbers come from? Excuse me. Who compiled these numbers? What's the
I have to go. I have to.
That's wildly understated for the United States. I mean, my God, the Permian Basin alone has higher reserves than that.
I'll have to go take a look.
Yeah.
Probably they calculate the commercially viable reserves, which can change.
Well, yeah.
Need to be.
United States has well over 100 million barrels of reserves at current technology. I realize the government severely understates it, and that's probably what this is based on.
But when you take a look at world's largest oil and gas companies by market cap, you have Saudi Aramco leading the pack there. Yeah. You take a look at these other ones. Let me get rid of the banner rolling across the bottom. That will help. You have ExxonMobil, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, Southern Company. You take a look at this one. There is a lot of things. We're leading the world in oil production, and 50% of the oil production in the United States is done by independently, privately owned companies. That makes the United States different from the rest of the world. So when you sit back and take a look at the rest of the world, you've got Saudi Aramco being a kingdom owned, basically, if you would. It's publicly traded, however, it's owned by the kingdom. And then you take a look at how the other ones have changed. I think we're going to see continued change in Shell, BP, and Total Energies, as we say here in Texas, Oklahoma type thing. You're going to see them continue down the road of getting back to basics to oil. You're going to see, I think, changes in the oil industry itself in 2026.
Well, yeah, they have been doing it for all of 2025. We were going to talk about the dead ends of the energy transition, guys.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
It's time to get to that. I agree.
We're misleading our listeners.
And we should let Irina kick that off.
Oh, well, I was thinking how you don't hear anything about fuel cells. Remember fuel cells?
Yeah, I remember them. Yeah.
Yeah, we remember. You don't
hear
anything
like green hydrogen. I remember that too. Yeah.
Yeah. There's still the green hydrogen hype is on its last legs. Even the legacy media is starting to say it's not going to happen. Except the Financial Times. I think there was a story in the Financial Times that said, yeah, it's totally going to work or something. But fuel cells are one thing we're not hearing anything about anymore because apparently they couldn't bring the cost down. And there's less about sustainable aviation fuels.
Yeah. And sustainable shipping fuels.
Oh,
which is turning into LNG.
Sustainable shipping fuels. Yeah, that was totally going to work. Well, there isn't enough feedstock for both, aircraft and ships. So somebody go to reality check.
The ghost of Christmas past lurks. People are waking from their nightmares that Miliband might be the next UK PM. I gotta hand it to the Muppet. He's not a Muppet, but he's more of a Wallace and Gromit character,
Yeah.
Mr. Ed Miliband. I mean, you got to hand it to the guy when he goes to the COP30 climate change, not once, but twice, flies all the way there and then flies all the way back and then flies all the way there and then flies all the way back in the same meeting. I got to hand it to the guy. He knows how to really add to the climate crisis.
Why did he have to go back to the UK and then return to Brazil?
He forgot his keys or his car was still running in the parking lot at Heathrow.
I would remind everyone that when the Tories were in charge of the UK government, their energy and climate minister did exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
I believe it was at the conference that was held in Dubai. What was that? COP 28, 27, maybe. It's hard to remember anymore. Not in Dubai, but Qatar. So
Well, I
anyway,
hope so, Travis.
yeah, this is it's a habit with the UK to have
Yeah.
their people doing that.
But they arrest people for having a mean tweet.
Oh yeah. So
A lot of
back to the dead ends. So we've done.
Thanks, Rodney. I appreciate that, by the way.
We've
Thank you.
mentioned fuel cells, green hydrogen. What was the third you mentioned?
biofuels, well, sustainable fuels.
Yes, the sustainable fuels. So what's
Dying
happening in shipping is most of the merchants are turning to compressed natural gas to fuel their ships instead of this clean diesel stuff that is so overly expensive.
Or LNG. The LNG tanker.
LNG, yeah.
LNG container ships being built in India and South Korea are considerable now. I've been tracking how many of those are, and it is a huge change.
Well, it's a growing market,
Yes.
especially in Europe.
So the fuel cells, those were going to be powered by hydrogen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
We've
not
seen-
not necessarily green hydrogen.
Right, exactly. Last week
Imagine
we
that.
saw ExxonMobil announce they're cutting their investments in their low carbon solutions business unit by 33% over the next 5 years, and including suspending their planned blue hydrogen operation at the Baytown refinery here in Texas. They followed Shell and BP, both canceled major green hydrogen planned plants in the Netherlands. I think both of those were going to
Yeah.
be located in the Netherlands. Total Energies, Equinor have also canceled investments in green hydrogen ventures. Green hydrogen is dying on the vine because it's too costly. The technology's not there. The infrastructure's not there. This was all very predictable 10 years ago, and it remains predictable that 10 years from now, it's also going to be an abject failure and one of the dead ends in the energy transition.
If we sit back and take a look at the dead end of the fuel cells, we see the growth of LNG. There are two stories about LNG and fuel cells in the energy transition. And we also see speaking of the Trump administration's squash or getting out of the climate change, we see the shipping industry, speaking of shipping industry, has not had the COP change or the UN climate regulatory issues impact the shipping. They said, well, we'll just wait till Trump gets out of office. Because they were about to hammer the shipping industry. And that would have been a gigantic change.
Yeah.
By the time Trump goes out of the White House, leaves the White House, there will be no money at all to spend on these dead ends.
Right.
Why does nobody think about that?
It doesn't fit the narrative. I mean, you've got this prevailing narrative that
yeah, but you make these plans, you need to make them at least partially realistic.
Yeah.
You can't just plan and hope, we'll find the money somewhere.
So the energy transition needs to be based on facts?
At least partially, Stu, at least a grain of reality. Now it appears the EU is bowing to car makers, as the media put it, and they will postpone the internal combustion engine ban.
Yeah, for 5 years.
Yay! By 5 years.
Yeah.
Postpone.
Yeah.
And
Well,
5
they
years
have
from
to
now, they'll
save
postpone
face.
it again.
Exactly. They have
Yeah.
to save face. They kind of say, we were so stupid. It
Yes.
could never work.
But by then, Ursula von der Leyen will be happily blissful retirement, and no one will blame her for the next delay.
Of course not. Of
Yes.
course not.
That's how this all works. What's another dead end? I've got one. You know what I think is a dead end? I
My
think
hairline?
electric vehicles are going to prove to be a dead end. Maybe not in 2026, but within the next 5 to 10 years, I think the whole industry is going to be a dead end.
Yeah, well, they definitely prove that they're not as viable as they were supposed to be. The revolution is not happening,
Right.
except in China, where they have a problem with cars being too cheap. So they kind of overshot their mark, I think, as they tend to do in a lot of industries, including solar and wind, overcapacity, overproduction, and the prices tanking. I think they have the same problem with EVs now, and they have to send them to Europe, where there are European car makers that don't want to go bankrupt.
Right.
I think you're right. The EV as the dominant mode of transportation is definitely a dead end. There's a niche for EVs. No,
There is a
with
niche
buses.
for EVs. Yes.
Yeah.
Especially with buses, when you look at the corruption that happened in Canada, and this would have been a great question for Tammy, the EV buses, and then you get Kamala Harris that was actually really in love with a bus, and you get tickled on that cringe-worthy that we all love buses that she did. That was absolutely horrific. And you take a look at Jennifer Granholm before Secretary Chris Wright got in,
I'd rather
and
not.
she went on a horrific, we're going to go on an EV trip.
With the
was
solar
embarrassing.
panels on her garage.
Yeah, it was absolutely a disaster. But when we take a look at where we are heading, I see the world is healing. And I think that we're going to wake up in 2026. I think it's going to be a volatile year for finances. I think it's going to be a settling out of marketplaces. And I think people are going to realize that, wait a minute, returning to tangibles and turning to commodities and returning to internal combustion engines and not robbing. I think the African nation, the South American nations need to take advantage of their own natural resources for the betterment of their own people. And that needs to be a main front of society. Let's not go through the UK or the European methodology of colonialism.
But maybe it depends on
How was
how
that
much money the net zero crowd is promising to these nations, because they tend to be a lot poorer than European nations. And while European nations are committing suicide, they are giving out money to African countries, African governments, and South American governments. This is kind of free money.
Yep.
As
Yeah,
we-
until they
we-
run out of other people's money to steal, right? I mean,
remember that World Bank investigation that showed $40 billion in climate finance unaccounted for. It's easy to lose track of climate money.
right.
You can do whatever you want with it.
I want to give Jack Prandelli a shout out. He's got a heck of a Substack. It is the Merchant News Substack. I just interviewed him. He was skiing in the Swiss Alps, And he said, I don't know if you already mentioned but BP exit and pauses across offshore wind and hydrogen, sale of its U.S. Onshore wind business, multi-billion-dollar erosion in renewables portfolios that effectively were overpaid for.
Yes.
Take a look. What was the
that exposes another dead end of the energy transition, which is ESG, which was nothing more than
investment, ESG investment.
Yes. Now, so that raises the question, BP invested in a lot of those projects, mainly due to the advocacy of its former disgraced CEO, Bernard Looney, who had to resign in disgrace for reasons we won't detail here. But, a lot of these other companies, and I won't name names, made these investments based on the advice of consulting firms, big multi-billion-dollar consulting firms, who I, again, will not call out by name, although I should. I wonder what the implications of the collapse of the ESG fad will have on the multi-billion-dollar consulting firms who gave all that awful advice to the management teams at these big oil companies who were paying them millions of dollars, by the way, for that terrible advice. So far, I haven't seen those implications, so maybe there won't be any, but boy, there ought to be.
No, because they continue churning out reports about how net zero is still going on, regardless of what the US is doing. They keep trying to convince us that green stocks actually outperform. No, not just green stocks, even private green companies tend to outperform other industries. There was this absolutely ridiculous report by, well, I can't remember the name, but it was one of the heavyweights in the consulting business that generally green energy companies are only doing worse than big tech. That's how good they are. They outperform all other industries except big tech, which is spending billions on AI, as if that's performance. But okay.
Yeah.
That's how good they are. This is very dangerous for the people who read these reports.
Yep. Yeah, Campbell Andrus makes a really good point here. There should be follow-up about those recommendations that were made.
Of course there should be.
In every company I worked for, there would be. Okay. And I worked for several really big companies in the oil and gas industry, and there would have been repercussions for that kind of terrible advice. But, I don't know if there's accountability left in the industry in the same way anymore. Sorry, Stu, I interrupted you there.
That's all right. I had a senior moment anyway. But when we love Gail. Way to go, Gail. But you sit back and take a look at the marketplace as it changes. I still think the governance section of ESG did good things to the U.S. oil markets. Only the governance side, because the commitment, the CEOs, both in private and in public, in oil and gas, to give back to investors, they have learned their lesson, and they have been doing a lot better on giving investments back. And you take a look at who is getting money back. When you look at like Solyndra, or you look at the other renewable energy, they're not there. I think that is going to be in 2026. Right now, we are seeing a resurgence in solar on the stock market. And when you take a look at solar, they're running in, and you've got, was it 5% that they can hold part of their money for their subsidies? So they're throwing down 5% of a build, and they're buying it, and then they're going to leave it there. There's a complete wind farm that is laying in a field, and they're saying they're starting it. They're not going to start it. They're just taking the money.
Right.
So
they're taking the money. Yes.
They're taking the money. And boy, we almost sounded like an Italian. Hey, they're taking the money. I mean, and this is what's going to happen. You're going to see a spike in 2026. I'm watching the stock market, and you're going to see solar and wind take a hit. because the subsidies are going to start running out in 2026 and 2027, and it's going to start hitting that sector of the market.
So wouldn't that, reject the claim that in many parts of the world, wind and solar are already cheaper than fossil fuels, even without subsidies? Or will the people making this claim, saying this thing, just say, oh, we meant China, which has subsidies? And even after it removed some of the subsidies, has very cheap energy from what? From hydrocarbons, from fossil fuels.
Sure. But China, I mean, when you can use child labor and slave labor, you can produce energy pretty cheap.
I don't know if they
compared
use
to the rest of
child
the world.
labor, David.
They use slave labor. We know that for sure.
Yeah,
And
well,
when you have very lax environmental requirements, when you
exactly, a lot of
Yeah.
things that make it cheaper to produce things that are supposed to be cheap, but they are not actually cheap anywhere outside of China. Yeah.
Oh, Gail Campbell Andrus, my project received a 0 out of 20 on the DEI aspect of my project. I had a highly diverse group of employees. 0. They gave
Why?
me a 0.
Well,
Why did they
shouldn't
give
they
you a 0?
explain why?
That's sad. I think that we are going to see a continued exposure of the falsehood of the governments that are corrupt, and the world is going to realign according to that. Net zero and DEI and corruption is going to have a global awakening in 2026 and 2027.
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully.
I'm hopeful.
Good.
Well, I want to go back to one thing Stu said about, oh my God. Oh, about, I'm sorry, it was Irina who wasn't Stu, about the claim that wind
I'll
and
take
solar
credit.
is cheapest, and well, and then Stu followed up with the discussion about how so many of these biased analysts are claiming that the clean energy companies are the most valuable companies, the highest performing companies.
Yeah.
Well, what's going to happen? And we're going to have a drop dead date, July 1st next year in the United States, when the ability to qualify their projects for those IRA subsidies ends on that day. And what you're going to see is the market's going to decide which of those companies are the most attractive companies.
Exactly.
Without the subsidies. And what you're going to see is a collapse in the stock value of virtually all of those companies, because their business plans are not viable business plans without the subsidies. And everyone knows it. Okay. Everyone knows it. So unless the Republicans in Congress decide to chicken out and amend the big, beautiful bill to extend that deadline, which there's going to be a lot of pressure on them to do. If they don't do that, the value of those companies is going to collapse because they're not viable companies without the subsidies, and everyone knows it. So that's my rant for today.
Well, it's not a rant. You make a very good point.
So
Gail
does that
said
qualify as a dead end? I think that qualifies as a dead end.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, it's
Gail
going to be when you take a look at the World Bank going to Africa, and you take a look, I reached out to NJ Inuk, the head of the African Energy Chamber there. We're seeing a resurgence in drilling. And this is from Gail Campbell Andrus. Yes, they said I did not have an appropriate process in place to achieve diverse employee profile, but I'd already achieved that, so my process was excellent. Holy smokes! I'm sorry,
Gail is in Canada,
Canada.
correct?
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. She
I
followed
don't
that
know
up.
what to say. You got there, but not the right way. Hybrid sounds,
Hybrids are
they
great.
make sense.
They're the car of the future.
I
They really
think
are
that
the vehicle of the future.
Yeah.
the hybrid, the not plugged in hybrids make an absolute sense. And I
Yeah.
think the not plugged in hybrids will actually do what Governor Hair Gel, Climate Bob,
Newsom.
Governor Newsom, thank you. Governor Newsom in California has eviscerated the oil industry in California. They're just losing everything in California. Now you take a look at what he wanted to do was reduce demand for oil and gas. And the hybrids, if he had gone the hybrid route, would have reduced emissions and demand for oil and gas. And that would have then driven him out and then had a plan. I think eventually when we get to solid state battery technology that is solid state and good for the environment, I think that we will get rid of a lot of the oil and gas, but you can't make feedstock for plastics or anything else out of windmills, solar panels. You got to have oil and gas. You're still going to need oil and gas for that. So I think when people realize that we need to use the best technology to get the best job done, we will all get along better.
Can we all just get along?
I think we should.
We should try.
Yes.
David, you had a couple great stories.
Oh, are we going to stories now? Are we
You
done
bet.
with? Wait. Are we done with the dead ends, Irina?
Well, I think so. I'm sure we can talk for hours about this.
I think it's a dead end, David.
Okay, it's a dead end. Oh, let's see here. Well, so the first one is Supremes have a chance to end climate lawfare. For those who aren't aware, there's been a long-running lawfare campaign targeting oil and gas companies here in the United States, in which trial lawyers led by a firm out of San Francisco literally recruit city and county governments officials who are, anxious to signal their virtues about green energy to sue, a bunch of deep pocket defendants on a claim that the emissions from burning their products have caused damages to these cities and counties, although they don't specify what the damages are because they can't specify what the damages are. And there's been a long-running series of these things for at least 5 or 6 years now. I've written probably 20 stories about it overall. And so far, 10 of those have been summarily dismissed by the judges in the case against the plaintiffs because their specious lawsuit defies federal primacy over regulating air emissions under the Clean Air Act, and the United States federal government has primacy over that. And it's the same arguments, the same decision in every case. Finally, the defendants in a case out of Boulder, Colorado, which includes a bunch of the biggest oil companies in the United States, asked for a writ from the Supreme Court to put an end to this nonsense. The Supreme Court heard oral arguments on Friday, will make a decision on whether or not to rule on the case. First, they have to decide whether or not they want to rule. And then after that, they'll have to decide what to rule. But if everything goes the right way, the Supreme Court could actually end this nonsense. It's cost hundreds of millions of dollars that, in these corporations flows through retail prices at the pump and other costs of energy on consumers. And all for nothing, all because these trial lawyers and their greedy plaintiffs that they recruit, are hoping for an enormous payday from one or more of these deep pocket defendants who decides to settle one of these cases. Yeah. That hasn't happened yet. The plaintiffs have yet to get a positive ruling in any of the cases in a final decision. And it's just time for the Supreme Court to stop this madness. So that's what that story was about. And the other one is Blue Freeze. ExxonMobil pauses major clean hydrogen project. That is a piece about at Enverus, an analysis at Enverus about what I mentioned earlier, Exxon's decision to freeze funding for the blue hydrogen project which they were going to make ammonia out of to ship over to Europe to use in fertilizers. That project has been suspended as a part of their 33% cut in their clean or low carbon solutions business unit. And really, low carbon solutions business unit is now boiling down to not exclusively, but almost exclusively ExxonMobil's very profitable carbon capture and storage projects that they've, engaged in for 40 years, I guess. ExxonMobil, for those who are not familiar, has for the past 40 years captured and stored more carbon than all other nations on earth combined. Okay. That's how limited the CCS business really is globally, that one company completely dominates it. And they're going to continue to invest in their CCS projects, despite pushback from a lot of people who criticize CCS. And, they believe it's viable. They believe it's profitable. It's competitive with their oil and gas projects. And so they're going to continue to pursue those. But otherwise, as far as I can tell, they're kind of suspending all other aspects of their low carbon business. So that's kind of a trend in the industry that I think other, their peer companies will all follow because those projects, wind and solar and other things, for an oil company simply can't compete with the oil and gas project. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
May I add something that I'm seeing as a trend in big oil, at least for Exxon, Chevron, and even Liberty Energy, and that is the transition of oil companies. Instead of the transition of oil companies going into wind and solar, I'm seeing them pivot into data center electrical utility generation for data centers. And
yes. Yeah. But that's
so
in Exxon, that's not a low carbon project. That's an oil and gas project. So it's just technical.
Yeah. But I'm just saying this is an add-on to that. I'm saying it next year, you're going to be seeing more of that.
Oh, for sure. No doubt. You can find me at blackman.substack.com. I try to write every day, and I'm generally pretty good at doing it most of the time, but every once in a while, like yesterday, I take a day off.
Good for you. No wonder you're rambunctious today.
I had a granddaughter's volleyball tournament. I had a good excuse.
Did she win?
Oh, yeah, they won the whole thing.
All right. And we have Irina.
Speaking of data centers, Red Hot Texas is getting so many data center requests that experts see a bubble. Really?
Really? Nobody could have seen that.
I don't know if this story needs a comment, but I'm starting to see the words hype and bubble increasingly often when media reports on data centers. So I don't know what to tell you. Maybe there is a reason they're using these words, because there was a story in Bloomberg about how complicated it is to finance the construction and operation of a data center. I didn't read it because I forgot. I had bookmarked it and I will read it. But if that's complicated, you really don't have certainty if you will need all this electricity unless you get enough funding to build the thing in the first place. But yeah, so many data center requests. So that's interesting. I think that's a situation that, where it's a close look going into 2026.
Can I add this? Let me add this graphic, Irina, to your ERCOT actual and projected load.
Oh, thank you. Great.
Look at this bad.
No studies submitted. That's a lot of no studies submitted.
Absolutely. Holy cow, Batman.
No. It's more than half.
ERCOT right now has 181 gigawatt nameplate capacity, and they're going to go to 225 additional nameplate capacity.
That's of all the applied for projects.
Exactly.
Most of which aren't going to become reality.
Yeah.
So, oops.
But yeah, that's how
It's not a
significant
bubble.
it is.
It's not a bubble.
Yeah.
And the other story is adorable. China's all hoarding clouds outlook for slowing demand growth. Guess what's happening? China is buying oil that it is not using immediately, and that interferes with the narrative of slowing global oil demand growth, especially slowing China demand growth, because it's always been China, 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 China pushing prices higher because China's demand is growing so fast. Now it's not growing so fast, but it's still buying a lot of oil. And that's really not good for their narrative. They really can't say that global demand is on the decline already or slowing down massively because China doesn't need all that oil because China has LNG trucks and EVs. I think it's beautiful.
Well, but so that's raising concerns, of course, because one potential motive for China wanting to hoard oil is preparation for an invasion of Taiwan. Right?
Why would they care? I really don't understand this about Taiwan. I understand the narrative is that it's a very, very belligerent nation and all that, but
I'm just saying that that's a geopolitical concern, that one of the reasons you hoard oil is because you want to be sure you can maintain your supply lines to your military during a time of war. And so that's what
Taiwan is not, it's not exactly a large country, you know?
No, but I mean, United States, while we don't like to overtly say it, although Joe Biden blurted it out several times while he was pretending to be president, the United States has an obligation, a treaty obligation, to come to Taiwan's defense in the event China should invade it. So, I don't know if the Trump administration would necessarily follow through on that commitment, but it is a treaty commitment that we just don't like to talk about.
Okay, that might be, or maybe they're just taking advantage of low prices.
Maybe that's what they're doing. Yes,
I think that that's a big part of what's happening.
Yeah.
Why would they want to engage the US in a direct hot war? I mean, they're totalitarian, but I don't think they're stupid. Yeah, and that would be stupid. It would, but what do I know? I'm being genuine. Yeah, but the adorable part for me was how desperately they're trying, Bloomberg and all the rest of them, how desperately they're trying to insist on their narrative, on it being accurate, an accurate representation of reality, regardless of what is actually happening in that reality.
It's almost like they're pre-preparing an excuse why they were wrong, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or refusing to acknowledge it. Tom, I can understand they're preparing for war. That's if your son is in the army, that's what the army does. It should be prepared for such eventualities. I'm just saying that this may be one reason now that David has informed me what happens, but it's not the only reason that China is stockpiling crude. China has greater needs in with respect to oil than it has production. So stockpiling for them makes perfect sense, even if they're not really preparing for war. As to whether they will invade Taiwan or not, we'll see, I guess.
Well, and I obviously wasn't clear enough. I'm not predicting that that's what they're doing.
No, but you
that raises a potential concern.
Reason for this stockpiling. No, I understand. Yeah.
I totally agree with your outlook too.
Yeah, that was me.
Cool.
Had fun.
And people find you on
Irina's Live on Energy.
Cool. Well done. Global oil demand to increase. This is on energynewsbeat.co. Let me think. We were just talking about this. Oil demand to increase over the next 15 years. What does this mean for investors? I had fun writing that little bad dog. And then you take a look at the AI data center build out in Texas, a home run or a potential bust. That was kind of like what we already covered as well. And we've already talked about the regime change on this one. And Rodney brings up a great point as well. Taiwan is a critical country because the semiconductor industry and the world's dependence on a reliable supply.
Which
Rodney,
is one of the reasons why the Trump administration, you see them incentivizing the build out of a domestic semiconductor industry. Is, that's part of the motivation for that.
Very smart move. Yeah.
Sorry, Stu, go ahead.
Oh no, I worked at Intel for 12 years, and I always questioned, why are we building plants, fabrication plants in China? But that was just, I was not on that high end of a pay scale. And then you can find me on theenergynewsbeat.substack.com, and you can find me on energynewsbeat.com, and had a really fun one there. You can tell I was really enjoying writing about the EU. And you kind of love a good EU story just to make your heart sing.
It makes some of our hearts cry, but okay.
Yeah.
You sit back and kind of look at this and go, I see that NATO has lost a lot. You see that we are at war because of the energy policies of the EU trying to steal or lock up the 230 million euros, whatever the number is, will backlash against the EU because you take a look, why would you want to put your money in an association that's going to steal it? Oh, that would be the U.S. government.
Yeah, I was going to say we do that every year with our tax returns.
Anyway, so as we had a fantastic
a good question.
Back to energy transition.
Yeah, carbon
they
credit
should
market.
die, but they're not going to. I think that's one of the last things that the net zero crowd will give up
because it's a revenue source that they can then turn around and do it. They're going to fight for that bad dog.
Unfortunately, yeah.
So we've got about 4 minutes. Let's go around the horn here. What do you see going on, Irina, in 2026?
More of what we saw going on this year, but hopefully, the war in the Ukraine will end. I'm not saying it will, but I sure hope, because it's been 4 years. Wars tend to last about 4 years based on the 20th century. I just hope it ends. And I'm looking forward to the continued deterioration of the European Union. I can't wait to see what they will come up with next and how much more insane it could all get. They're ambitious in this respect.
I'm in 100% agreement with you, Irina. And David, how about you?
Well, in the United States, I think we will have another year of gradually falling rig counts, gradually increasing overall production due to advancements in technology and more mergers and acquisitions, creating economies of scale inside the big corporations that are producing the shale gas more and more. We've had a real transition in the United States from 10 years ago. 10 years ago, independent producers produced most of the shale oil and gas, and now it's bigger companies, including several of the big majors, but also big independent producers who have consolidated resources. Economies of scale are so important in the shale business. It helps you lower your break-even costs, and that's obviously important with oil at 57 and falling again today. So we'll see that. We're going to see, I think, what was the other thing? The complete death of ESG as a thing in the media, because the media doesn't like to talk about failures of the green transition. We're going to see about a third of that proposed capacity for data centers actually begin to come to fruition in Texas. A lot of it is going to get built. Most of it won't, but a lot of it will. Maybe 60 gigawatts instead of 200 You know, and Texas is going to have to find a way to cope with that. One, you know, but I think, just to brag for a second, the reason why Texas is such a popular destination for these big tech companies who are run by, you know, mainly liberal individuals is why. It's because of profit and a very friendly, business friendly, legal and regulatory environment here in Texas that other states simply do not possess, and a lot of cheap land here in Texas, especially out in West Texas. And that's where a lot of this capacity is going to go in. So it's going to be a very fruitful year for data center builders in Texas.
I agree. And I think we're going to see a healing globally when people are starting to wake up, and it's going to be a tough year. I think that we may see some more continued issues, but as we wake up and heal, I think that people are going to realize that you can't trust any publication. You can't trust any government. Do your own research. And I believe that we will be a better world in 2026 and 2027. So
I really hope you're right. Really, really hope you're right, Steve.
I'll tell you what, a year ago, I didn't think we'd have a United States. And now I'm over here thinking that
you were pessimistic, yeah.
Now I think that we are going to be healing, and the entertainment value of President Trump, you cannot beat that when you sit back and realize the deep state is alive and well. And when you realize what he's fighting for the rest of the world, the deep state is a problem. Now, I think it is going to be defunded as we go through this, and I think that we will have a great world in 2026 and 2027.
No.
So,
from Travis, our favorite
Travis.
non-name LinkedIn user, it says, enjoy the remainder of 2025 with your family and friends, Stu, David, and Irina. Thank you all for what you do here on LinkedIn. And I want to just take that as an opportunity to thank everyone who's a loyal viewer and listener to the show. And we enjoy starting our weeks this way. This is our last show for the year. We'll be back after the first of the year, and hope everyone has a happy holiday season.
Sounds great. Thanks, guys.
Merry
Christmas, everybody.
And Happy New Year, everyone.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
See you next year.
Ho, ho, ho.